The scars of your love remind me of us. They keep me thinking that we almost had it all. The scars of your love, they leave me breathless. I can't help feeling
We could have had it all. You had my heart and soul.
need the
Had it all. You had my heart and soul. We could have had it.
Hey siblings, and welcome to Conversations with my big sister. Yes, it's us again, and we're here to give you soul replenishing conversations. My name is Linda Sifumba, and I'm so glad that you guys took some time to really listen to us again this week. So today in studio, I have Nokukhanya. I'm so grateful that my friend came to join us today. We're going to be talking and unpacking on really important conversations today. We're going to be talking about sexual abuse, and also we're going to be talking about mental health. So, usisi wami ukhona namhlanje, baby girl, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, baby girl.
How are you doing today, mama?
Well, and you, baby girl.
I'm good. Thank you so much for coming today, friend, and just giving of your time and of your heart.
Thank you so much for having me. This is going to be a really interesting one.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Awesome. So, Nokukhanya, I just would like to find out, where do you come from? Where were you born?
So, I was born to a human mother. My mom is from the West Rand.
Okay.
And my father is from the South in Alberton.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was born in town in Johannesburg.
Okay.
I was born and raised in the South. And then when I was about in grade 4, my parents got divorced. I then moved to the West Rand and completed my primary school education there, and then moved back for high school to Alberton High in the South. And then, yeah, my life is pretty fun
Yeah.
throughout. So there's a lot of stories we can go into.
So
about
what is
that.
fun for you? How was high school for you? How was it for you in terms of your identity and who you are as a young lady in high school? How was that for you?
So it's really interesting. So I'm the eldest.
Okay.
When you ask me like how was high school, it was weird because I had come from another area completely. So
Okay.
I knew some people from my primary school earlier on who had gone to another school, and I wanted to go to that school. But obviously I couldn't go there because they didn't allow, there's like area catchment areas that you have.
Yeah.
So because of that, I went to a new school. So I was like the new girl and nobody knew, and they're like, oh, who's this person? So it was really cool because I went from in grade 4 to grade 7, I was in an all-girls school,
Okay.
Catholic school, very strict. We had nuns and we had maths and,
Hectic.
and then I moved to a public school, co-ed, very relaxed environment. There were boys, which was also a new element. And high school taught me a lot of things, and especially about sexual health, and especially about boundaries. So that was a big shift.
Okay, tell me about boundaries. Like, that's a very interesting statement for high school.
Yeah.
Like, how did you learn? Why did you even have to think and consider about, boundaries?
So not everybody knows this, and I've only started sharing this recently just
Okay.
because of the fact that I think I'm at a point where I've been able to acknowledge my story and like hold on to it and share it. So when I was in grade 8, I had entered a beauty pageant at that point. It was our high school's beauty pageant.
Okay, was this at your all-girls school or the...
No, the new one.
Okay.
The old girls' school's my old life. I feel like that was like the
This was your brand new,
brand new,
fresh start.
totally new, totally me. So I had moved to this new school and they had a beauty pageant.
Okay.
And one of the nights we had a late practice that had run over. And my dad wasn't able to pick me up at that point. I can't remember why exactly, but it was probably along the lines of he had a meeting that was late.
Okay.
And that evening while I was waiting for him, he, somebody else, some guy had come to me while I was like waiting at the gate.
Yeah.
Got a bit physical, wanted me to go with him. I don't want to go with him, tug and pull.
My goodness.
And at that point, outside of school, he raped me there.
Oh my God.
So it was, it was one of those things where the reason that I went to the school initially was because I had fought with my parents because I didn't like the old school I was in, the all girls school. I was bullied. The girls were really hectic. I had attempted to, I started cutting myself. I had attempted to commit suicide at that point. Not necessarily intentionally. It was more like an accidental thing where I cut too deep and and parents got involved and families got involved. So I was afraid that if I had told anyone about this, they were going to take me out of that school and take me back.
Oh my God, Khanya.
So because of boundaries, I had to learn, I think in the wrong way, what I wouldn't allow myself to do as a young girl, but also as someone who was too afraid to talk to her parents because she didn't want to go back.
Yeah, to
and
the
she
old school.
And the other problem was this thing had come out at school, because I told a really good friend of mine and she just felt so guilty that she decided to talk about it in our life orientation class. And eventually it came out that it was me. So also boundaries with friends, when you tell them things, what constitutes a secret that I can keep to myself versus a secret I can share? How deep is our friendship where I can actually share something like that with you, trusting that you're going to keep it a secret? How do I engage with my family? Because this also then came out, and then my parents had to get involved. My family had to get involved. Medical professionals had to get involved, gynaes and things like that. Boundaries with regards to that, moving between, now you're a teenager, do you want to have a boyfriend? Do you not want to have a boyfriend? If I do have a boyfriend, how far do I go? It was a lot. I'm looking back at it now and I'm like, okay, I think I handled it pretty okay.
Yeah.
But as it was happening, it was just one thing after the next thing. And it was very overwhelming.
Was there ever a moment where you really unpacked that? As you were going through it, was there ever a moment where you actually sat down and you really spoke to someone about what actually really happened to you? Because I feel like as you're explaining, it's almost like you were never really aware of the magnitude of the situation or what really happened to you.
Yeah.
Was there ever a moment where you sat with someone, whether it's your mom or your psychologist or anyone, that you could feel you could trust and really unpack what happened to you and how it impacted you at that stage in your life?
Yeah, so as part of my family and all of my friends, and the people getting involved, it did involve some counseling. I think also for me, I also held back a lot because it was a big worry that if I reveal too much or people think I'm not coping, they're going to want to protect me, they're going to want to jump on me, and so there was also that added stress. But I think for the most part, I had a very strong family system who could kind of detect if I was crumbling. So when I say fully recovered and healed, no, but I think I was functional and I was safe in my environment. Yeah.
So you were just literally living through it the best way you could with the knowledge you had at that time.
Pretty much.
Okay. And you mentioned also about the cutting of yourself. How did that help you manage the situation? When did you start? What made you feel like cutting yourself would help you in the situation?
So you get to a point when you're being bullied and then you try to tell people about it and then they tell you it's a part of growing up, grow up, just deal with it. When they ask you what are they bullying you about, don't worry, that happens to everybody. Different people react differently to different things, and you sometimes feel like, okay, maybe I'm not big enough, maybe I just have to deal with it and go through it, and eventually you become numb. Because people are just coming at you with all these things. Everyone you're turning to is just telling you, you are overreacting. And you eventually find something that's external of yourself. Or I don't know about other people, but this is what I found, was that you look for something external to make you feel like, okay, I actually know what, but I also know what a pain is. Because I'm hurting so much inside, but everyone's telling me this is okay. So maybe I don't know what pain is,
Sure.
So it started off just with a small cut, and then you would cut and then it would hurt and you'd be like, okay, I'm back. And then it would be more and more. And then, like I said, I accidentally went too deep the one time.
Yeah.
And that's when people started getting involved.
Oh, shucks. So is that when mental health started coming into play in terms of your life? Is that when you started to recognize that, emotionally and mentally, things were not okay? Or was it your mom that recognized it, or was it you that recognized it within yourself, or somebody identified it in you?
I think it actually started long ago, even when my parents had started getting divorced and when they were fighting.
So your parents are separated as well?
Yes, yeah. So I mean, as children, and I even talk about this a lot because I work with them, children know. Like they can pick up
Sure.
on your emotions, they can pick up on your
Sure.
mood,
Sure.
and they also react to that. You know, it might be subconscious where they just like make you smile or give you a hug, or it might be active where they say, "Mommy, are you sad?" or "Daddy, are
Yeah.
you sad?" You know. So I think even when I was younger, I could see that my parents were fighting, but I distinctly remember when they got divorced and my mom told me that my dad and her were getting divorced.
Yeah.
You know, it was like the world is crumbling.
Yeah.
I didn't have the experience where I thought it was my fault.
Yeah.
My fault. You know, I would blame other people for it, like my parents, for example. But I think at that point, because I didn't properly deal with it, and people just would attribute the way that I acted to, she's just acting out, she's just angry, just leave her alone,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
That I think was the beginning of mental health for me. And then once you further expand on that into all the things that happened in my life, it was just like a compound factor to the points that most people know about. There was the Me Too movement that I spoke about.
Yeah.
Was kind of like a big finale to this whole issue of mental and sexual issues that I had.
Hectic.
So I think mental health has always been an underlying current or underlying theme of my life, but I've been managing pretty well, I think. Yeah, pretty well. I mean, you know.
And when was the time then, was this then university times where you then started to consider having to maybe see someone, or did you ever see someone about it? When did that happen?
So I started seeing someone initially after the incident that happened in
Which
high
was
school.
still in high school. Okay.
So after the rape in high school, I did see someone, but that was just, okay, let me just see this person so that everyone will get off my back. I really started seeing a psychologist when I was in medical school towards the end of my studies, because I
Okay.
started kind of fraying and falling apart at the seams because a lot of the stress of graduating, I would have
Sure.
been the first doctor in my family. I was a girl, you know, you want to represent and you want to be that
You're black.
you're black, you know. There's a lot of stress that comes with that, and you don't want to let anybody down. So I think that was taking its toll, not just on my mental health but also physically. Like I was losing weight, I was getting sick, you know.
Sure.
So that's when I think I properly can say I started taking care of myself properly at that point. Before that I was just doing whatever I needed to do to cope.
Sure. So do you think what contributes to you having to have not taken the fact that you might be struggling mentally, is it because of the stigma we have, you know, of mental health in black communities, that we shouldn't take it seriously? Do you think that's maybe one of the things contributing? Or what do you think it was that made you not, you know, consider having, when you were going to the psychologist in high school, having to take that seriously? What do you think contributed to that?
So I think the first thing is, like I had mentioned before, where everyone was saying, you know, it's just a part of life, you know, stresses happen. Prayer was a big thing that everyone like sent me to. And like, you know, one thing I find is now I'm really understanding my relationship with God and really forming it and realizing it, and I see why now it can help me with my problems, but it couldn't help me then. And so I feel like referring me to God in a place where I was at that point wasn't exactly necessarily what I needed. And in a community where we are with Africans, and you know, we turn to God for most of our solutions, that wasn't the one that would have helped. And I feel horrible saying that now that I think about it, but you know, at that time I needed help,
because it's either turning to God or you have the calling. Like, it's literally the two extremes in a black community. It's either we need to take you for a hectic prayer, or you have the calling, you need to become a sangoma.
Exactly. And I think we need to stop polarizing our problems. There are a whole grade of problems, and people, like I said before, deal with things differently. And so even with regards to our communities and our societies, when we deal with things in a way that polarizes us like that, it's either God or it's not God. If you don't pray, it means that you are possessed. If you go to the Bible and whatever, it means that, you know, you're doing something wrong, or you know, you are a sinner, or you are cursed. That makes people who don't necessarily have that connection feel guilty.
It's very true.
And I think I did feel a bit guilty at some points. The other thing is, with me at that point, because my family was all over the place, I didn't really feel I had that lock, you know, that a lot of people who have supportive backgrounds have. And in our society, that's how it is. You know, our families are in turmoil all the time. You have divorced parents, you have fighting parents, custody battles, gogos fighting with this one thinks that one cursed that one.
But somewhere we like to protect
Distance.
and cover that and make it seem like we're very, you know, perfect to society.
Exactly. And that's fine, because, you know, you don't want everyone to know your problems. But I think as a family, you need to learn how to deal with your problems, because sometimes one family member, like me at that time, will need a lot of attention. And if the whole family is crumbling at the seams, you just get what happened with me, which is, just be fine, you'll be okay. Or just the whole family unit crumbles and people blame each other for things. Yeah.
Okay. So I know that, like you mentioned, that you studied medicine. So you're a doctor, a qualified doctor today, which is amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you, Onuaku.
It takes a lot.
Thanks, Chelsea.
And as we're speaking now, I know that we've lost a professor in Cape Town through suicide. Yes, depression and, you know, mental health issues as well. And currently we are dealing with so many suicides that are happening currently in universities. Mostly right now, this past week, we had about, I think, up to 100 suicides at Wits alone. And the one thing I'd like to know from your medical perspective and just from your personal perspective, how do you think universities can address this? And also from just coming from a perspective of a doctor and having to work for the Department of Health. How can the government and how can the Department of Health address this situation that we're facing today?
So if I look at my personal capacity as a medical student going through it, one thing that I think as a person who did not stay at res, the advantage that the kids in res had was that they had mentorship programs. So you would have the seniors guiding and taking care of the juniors throughout their programs. And even within the residents, they had people that they could talk to, either, you know, head of house or things like that, who would be able to, you know, deal with any issues they have, whether it's related to academics or personal as well, you know. So I think providing that avenue for people who are not within residences is important. It's difficult because it's like a strategic and an administrative challenge, because there's so many people that come in and out. There's so many kids who are going through so much stress, especially close to exam time. It's happening now because of exams. And you'll see final year students are under so much stress because you just want to finish. You just are at the end of the road. And I know in my final year, I was exhausted. Like, I got to final year and I just was quitting every time I wrote an exam. Because my mom was like, "You're at the end, what do you mean?" And I'm like, because I'm so tired. I don't want to do this, you know. If you fail one exam in final year, we wrote 6 exams in final year. Every 6 weeks we were writing. So if you fail one of those exams, you fail the whole year and you have to repeat. It's just stress, and you have to pass with like a 60% mark, and you've got to do a practical and a clinical and a theoretical component. So there's a lot of pressure, and I don't think people are giving us enough support in terms of how to deal with that emotionally and psychologically from day one. We can't only do it when it's exams. We need it from the beginning. If I look at just myself as a medical professional working now and looking at it from a society point of view, again, people need to shy away from only seeking help when they're at a crisis stage. So we need to take care of ourselves again from day one. If you are a medical professional and you know you're experiencing high levels of anxiety and stress and trauma in your job, even if you're starting a new job that you're really anxious about and you may be in a new position, it's a new role that you've never experienced before, sometimes having just a psychologist to work through the fears that you have allows you to focus on what you really need to when you're at work, so that when you are away from that work environment, you're talking to someone who is not a friend, who's not going to bring and say, "Oh, but Chumi, don't worry, you know, we're very excited for you," you know, someone who isn't invested in just your success. They're invested in your mind and your mental health. That can really help, because psychologists have a way of getting you to deal with your own problems using your own brain and your own life, versus your friends who are like, "Okay, friend, I've got the solution," you know. And so medically that really would help. And then if I look at the context of just the government and the Department of Health, they really need to give us like proper trauma counseling, because we don't get that. Luckily for us, we have our seniors who we can talk to, but then who do the seniors talk to? You know.
Because I wanted to mention what was interesting about the Wits situation in terms of suicide. It was mostly students who live on res, or the teachers that stay with them at res, they can only do so much to look after them. My cry is for the government to do something else. I don't know what it is, maybe dedicate a certain curriculum, to mental health, to educating them or to training them on mental health and how to deal with mental health. I know my producer Palesa was talking about earlier, during her time at university, you used to be a psych student. And they used to be students having almost graduate, but they'd go back and speak to students that aren't okay mentally. Can that be something that maybe they could consider putting in place? Are there other things you think they can do, the government, the schools, universities, that they can do to put in place where there is more interactive, teaching, more interactive, engagement with the students, where they're able to help them physically in terms of, mental health, because the teachers can only do so much.
One thing I've actually found, and it's now that I'm remembering it and thinking about my early university experience, we actually did have that CCDU at WITS, and as well as campus health, do all of these programs, all of these lectures during a week. I remember all week they would have them come out. They had people come through, they would talk to you. If you have any problems, here's the lines, here's the pamphlets and things. This was why I was saying people only go and seek those things when they're having a crisis.
Sure.
So if you are first week living your best, you're going there to the thing, you're drinking, you're having fun, you've just got out of varsity, it's your first time alone, away from home, you're partying every night, your life is great. Until you realize at the end of the year, oh gosh, I haven't studied, all the money that they gave me is finished, what am I gonna do? Now I'm in relationships, so I'm doing things that I didn't expect to do. Now you've put yourself in this trap. And I think that is very difficult for us to do. Even if you incorporate it into things like life orientation, where kids are in class. Life orientation, I know I didn't even take it that seriously.
Sure.
So, yes, I think it's definitely important to increase the awareness about it. Which is why I do something called Mental Matters with a friend of mine called Gugu Masondo. So she she's currently taking treatment for a mental illness, and she had been discharged from a medical facility after an admission for an episode that she had, and she decided, what, I'm tired of telling people this thing over and over again. I need to educate people on a broader basis. And so that's what she did. She brought me on the first time to speak about depression, and this last one we did was for post-traumatic stress disorder, amongst other topics we spoke about. But I feel like when we make it, I don't know, if we make it cool, because I feel like a lot of people come there as well because of who was speaking. So Dr. Cindy Van Sale was there, and a lot of people would come to see her. Yes, we went through and we spoke about heavy topics, and we spoke about them in a way that really could get people to grasp it. I feel like we need to make it the same way that people talk about tsukiri and hi, and they talk about, hey, ugogo and my tablets. We need to speak about it in that way so that there's a smile that comes when we speak about things like depression, because everyone makes it so morbid. And depression is completely treatable. It's completely curable. All mental illness is treatable. Not all of it is curable, but I mean, it's manageable, and you can be symptom free for your entire life. So university students and high school students, and even in work environments, I'm not giving you the answer you want. I don't know how we can get people who are not suffering from mental illness to be more aware of mental illness without making it seem like we are shoving it down their throats. And that's basically the aim that I've had with this time with Mental Matters and my mental illness and my experience, from Me Too all the way through to talking about my burnout and experiences as a medical doctor and stress, is saying, you guys may see me functioning at a normal level, but I need help on my own. I'm struggling. So imagine me if I'm not even, showing symptoms of that. What about someone who is your strong friend? That thing, check on your strong friend. So I don't know, I can't give you the answer.
No, you don't. Whatever you feel in your heart is good enough. It's valid and it's important. I feel like your opinion is so strong and so important and needs to be heard in society. No one's opinion is wrong. So I just needed to hear your perspective.
Thank you.
I know you lived at home also while you were studying. And I mean, you were around your family most of the time. And you were dealing with this and studying at the same time, and you were dealing with anxiety and all of that. How was your family involved? How did they help you going through that? And how can other families be involved in other children's lives that are going through this situation in terms of mental health and studying at the same time?
So I think I was very lucky that I had like mini micro families, if I could call it that. So I had my mom and my sister at home.
Yeah.
My sister had then moved to stay with my dad, but I was primarily living with my mom. And then I went into race for about a year. I got over that because like I like home and I like food every day, and I like not having to stress about washing every day. Guys, yes, I'm so lazy. Like when I get home, I'm tired. I want to sleep. I don't have to think, how many thingies do I have left? How many red tops do I have? No. So it was really nice being able to come back to an environment where someone who's known you your whole life is there. And if you react a certain way, you're just like there were some days where I would just come home and I would just like put my head on my mom's shoulder and I would just cry, and she'd be like, okay, this is what happened.
That's amazing that you had that support.
Yes. And you know, I never ever take it for granted.
Sure.
Because if I didn't have my mom, I think the majority of the life things that happened to me would have broken me.
And it would have caught up with you in such a big way.
And also just the fact that I had strong support at school with the friends that I had there, not just because we were socially adept, if I can call it that, but we also used to work together, we used to study together, we used to like motivate one another, but also like people who are not directly related to me who would then come on. So friends that I made outside of the medical or university context, family members, extended family members, friends of family, you know, that I knew, people I identified at work who are elder than me, mentors and things like that. I was very lucky that I was able to find that. And I know some people don't even have, you know, parents in the area, they don't have access to them on the phone, you know, at least my parents, I think I'm lucky that my dad and my mom went to university so they can understand a bit of the pressures. But if you're the first to graduate, you're in a completely different area, you don't know anyone in the city, the nearest person that you know is about 300-400 kilometers away.
Sure.
You can only phone them, you can't speak to them every day because finances are low, things like that. That's why it's very important that we need universities and even organizations outside and corporate to get involved and say, if you are going to come work for my corporation one day, I need you to be okay in university as a student so that you can thrive. So that by the time you get to me, you're confident, you know what you're doing, and not just know what you're doing in your work, but knowing what you're doing when you leave. I need you to be sound of mind. And it's so funny because when you apply for medicine, right, when you do your applications, you do your academic transcripts from high school, but they also ask you about extracurricular activities. And I remember, I'll never forget it, there was a girl who applied with me, and I did everything. Like I did academics, and I was like deputy head girl,
okay, overachiever, all right,
netball, and choir, and I stepped forward and what. So it was really interesting.
That's a lot, friend.
Chomi?
No,
I had to keep myself busy. Pella, get her energy, Chomi. But anyway. I had all of those energies, and I was lucky.
I saw Red Bull. Key combination of Red Bull, Monster,
Red Bull
coffee.
Was based on me, Chomi. They got it from
on your
me.
life story.
But when you apply, you know, they ask about all those extracurricular activities, and she mainly had the academics, and I had the academics along with, you know, all the stuff, and I got in. And then she was mad, and I remember that the first week when they did like orientations and stuff, they asked us why, you know, I asked why is it that, you know, those of us with more diverse backgrounds got in, and they're like, because when you leave school, you live life. You are able to function and deal and manage with things outside of your academics. So if your academics fail, we trust that you have other things to support you. Sure. And you're not going to just pour yourself into academics, because that's what happens. You become this A student from high school.
That's very interesting.
900 distinctions, top what? Hey, academic school, what? And then suddenly you get to university, nobody's checking up on you, nobody's applauding you, nobody's saying, oh, you know, Linda, you did so well, very well, 100%, everybody clapped for Linda. Nobody's doing that. And you lose that sense of achievement. You're unable to be self-driven. And that is what gets people when they go to university. So if we can have, even from high school.
So interesting, Khanya.
Hey, yes, the things are popping up now, man. The light bulbs are going.
Thank you, Jesus. That's so interesting.
So we need to start stimulating diversity, not just in your academics, but also in your life. From youth, if kids want to play things, let them play. They're gonna have to go to school. They have to go to school. We can't stop them from going to school. But if they want to play sports, let them play sports. Let them love something else outside of school.
They shouldn't find their identity in school alone.
Definitely.
Because the moment that breaks, it's almost like it's the end of their lives. And it's the end of their worlds, and there's nothing else that they can do.
And not everybody is gonna be like, I was just lucky that I was able to do all this stuff, because my mom was like, you wanna, okay Chumi, hey, petrol, okay, now we must, okay, yeah, let's take you here, and now you wanna, okay, let's do that. I was lucky that I had that. But I think even now, we are the generation, we're starting to have our own kids, we're starting to have friends with kids. Support that growth, guys. Like, push your kids to do what they want to do, and if they want to do it, support them. If they don't want to do it because it's hard or difficult, allow them to understand that we're not accepting mediocrity. But if it's breaking you, then it's not for you.
I love that. And what I loved as well is you mentioned that your mom was just always there, silently there. And I think what resonated with my spirit is I feel like people should find people that will just be there. You just need a person to be there. The person doesn't have to have great advice. The person doesn't have to always know what to say to help you out. But as long as there's somebody that is there for you to lay your head on and cry on, that is the most important thing, to surround yourself with people that are there, whether friends, if your family's far away, have a friend, have a mentor, someone that is just a body that is just there and for you positively.
For those and I can only say this now, I'm not saying this applies for everyone, but I can only say this now, coming through the journey that I've come through. For some people, that there's no physical person, it's a God. It is a book, or it is something that you hold on to that is external of the physical world. So I'm not saying that is the solution to everything for everyone, but I'm saying if you have nothing else, sometimes anchoring yourself in something spiritual worked for me. You were talking about your foundation in spirituality and how important that is in your life currently, and how that helped you go through mental health issues. So tell me about that. Do you mind just unpacking what your spiritual practices are and how that helped you with everything that happened in your life? Yeah, not at all. So I think I've only really truly come to understand the power of God in my life in the past, I think, about a year. He's always been an undercurrent and an undertone, and I think I was lucky because I had family who would pray for me and really had that grounding for my life. But definitely in the past year, I had gone through a lot of loss in terms of not necessarily death per se, but there were a lot of friends that I lost. There were a lot of opportunities I had lost, relationships that I had lost. There were a lot of things in my life that were just falling apart. And I said, okay, I can't do this anymore, because the running away, the acting out, the kicking and screaming was not working anymore. Why I enjoy and really love spending time with God is because when you read the Bible, and there's an incredible analogy that Pastor Andre Olifir, which is the pastor at the church I go to, which is Rivers. No, guys, it's not a concert church, it's not a rockstar church, it's a church. Other people see what they want, I see my own lessons. But one thing analogy that he used was, there was this man who had a rock in his pocket, and his father had the rock and his grandfather had the rock, and this rock was like their lucky rock. They walked around with it, and people would always be like, it's such a pretty rock, like, why don't you go and take it to value it? It's like, man, it's just a rock, leave it alone. And they kept hounding him about it, and they're like, it looks so beautiful, see how, like, what it is. Ends up that this rock was like $51 million or something. It was a rare 51 carat something along the lines of an amazing rock. And the analogy he drew was that, when we look at the word and when we read the Bible, there's sometimes so many verses that you look over because you just think, it's okay, but when you come back to it and you really go into it and you value it, you take it to someone, you engage with people, you understand the worth that it comes to you in your life, and you can read the same verse over and over again, and it'll always mean different things depending on where you are in your life. That's what I love about the Bible. It's dynamic. Even God's relationship with me, it's dynamic, man. Like, sometimes I am flying high and God is just like, okay, I see it there, and just love my child. And then when I'm like, God, I need you, he's like, I got you, baby. I've been here the whole, so it's dynamic. He's this ever-present force in my life that I feel is leading me on and just guiding me wherever I need to go. But that only came, I think, through a realization that I am not enough. I am in control of my physical life, but everything that goes on around me I can't control. I can only control how I act in that moment. And even using the basis and the principles that you learn in the Bible, that you use through studying through the word and engaging with people who are like-minded, and sometimes also people who disagree with you, you're able to find the way that you need to navigate through this world without causing chaos necessarily. And that's why I really enjoy my spiritual journey right now. So it involves going to church, praise and worship. I love
Me
music.
too.
Chummy, you and me would be more ghost. That songs go in, You know what I mean? So it has the ability to unite people, but also I feel like you really draw strength from being able to sing, and just let that go in a physical way. And also when it comes to just finding the people that I found in God, it strengthened my relationship with other people who are in my life in a way that helps me understand. Because when you think about the concept of God sending this person, who his only son, all the way down to us, he was in heaven, treasures and everything, sent him down to nothing, poverty, to be embarrassed, to be humiliated, to be struck and to be crucified. This is a perfect human being, and he still went through all of that. How can I expect not to go through struggles in my life? But it's how I go through those struggles, it's how I come out and I view those struggles and the circumstances that allows me to really think that my spirituality has grounded me in a way that I can't really explain to anyone else, but to say it's the best thing that's ever happened to me.
That's so good. And what I loved from what you said, what I got and what resonated with me, because I personally also went through it, is having to identify your relationship with God. Not a relationship that anyone else tells you that this is the right way to Christian, or this is the right way to religion, or this is the right way to relate to God. It's important for you to establish firstly who you are in Christ, so that you can establish a strong and a well-grounded relationship with God. So when you do read the Bible, it can relate to you.
But you don't so powerful about that.
You don't see it through another person's eyes. You see it through your life, your perspective, and it really resounds with your spirit.
But just to expand on that, that's why it's important for mental health, because as well, how you are in your mind affects how you see the world. If you are depressed, if you are, going through stress, if you are not, if they always say, fix yourself before you get in a relationship with someone else. It's exact, and this is a principle you draw. Fix your relationship with God before you try to do the other things. And I found that people always worry that you're going to take time away from, your life if you focus on your relationship with God. But I found that I became more successful and I became more focused because I was trying to do things, that made me at peace. Not necessarily that I'm right and I'm reading my Bible 3 times a day and I'm going to church and that peace that it'll just happen one day. Well. And one day you'll be like, yeah, man. Hey, my heart is relaxed. I'm breathing better. It's not the sudden boom that happens at church and suddenly you're spiritual. And no, there's just the sudden ease that happens with your life. And I think we're so used to being given instant gratification. We're so used to getting that fix. And we're so used to having high times and party hard, karate, that we forget that those quiet moments,
the most important ones,
they're the greatest.
So speaking of mental health, what is mental health? What are the symptoms for a person that is not aware that this is what's going on in their lives? What is it?
All right, so if you look at the body, it's composed of a couple of things. So you have the physical, which is the things we can touch. So your bones, your blood, etc. And that's usually where people like myself, who are medical professionals and doctors, come into play. So we treat illnesses and diseases that occur to the body. You then get the spiritual, which is what we've been speaking about, and that's where people like traditional healers, people who are involved with like priests, etc., things that are related to ourselves outside of the earthly. That's what they usually specialize in. And then you get this concept with it's a very difficult thing to define, but your psyche and your mind, it's the thing that you can't necessarily touch and you can't share with another person, but it's a very real and very important part of your life, because it forms the basis of how you interact with the physical world, and also how you carry out your life day to day. So mental health is basically saying that you need to get your mind to a place where you are able to function at a level that is either acceptable to yourself or other people in a way that's not detrimental and is not going to harm you or other people. So that's a very broad term. Completely broad. And so mental health in one culture as well can be different in another. For example, like when they go through that process of becoming a traditional healer or sangoma, in an African context, that's completely understandable. But to someone who's a Caucasian, if they have to go through those experiences, that's schizophrenia for them. So it's also important to understand the mental health in the context of cultures, spirituality, ethnicity, and also genders is also important.
So good.
Because men and women have different levels or acceptable features of psychiatric illness.
Okay.
So for example, if a man acts out in society, if a man acts out and hits his wife, some people may think that's acceptable, but if a woman acts out and hits her husband, she's punished. So things like that will also affect mental health. But the baseline is, when you start having dysfunction in your interaction with the world, that's when we think, okay, maybe we need to go back to that.
What is a dysfunction? What would an example of a dysfunction be in relation to the rest of the world, or when you're alone? What is it that you can notice?
Okay, so if you look at your interpersonal relationships, so you having fights with people, you're not there's no harmony, you're a very difficult relationship with them, you're unable to either tolerate them, or you're overly attached to them. Your own relationship, with yourself, you're feeling that your mood is changing, your habits are changing, you're not doing the things you used to, you just don't have the energy for anything anymore, your body is actually changing, so either gaining, losing weight, you're unable to eat, or you're eating too much, your energy levels, etc.
I know my producer said you feel stuck.
You feel like you just want to break free from something, and also things like physical symptoms. So you feel heart palpitations, anxiety attacks especially present this way. Headaches, you have eye symptoms, hallucinations, visual, auditory, olfactory, which is smell, gustatory, which is taste, tactile, which is touch, hallucinations and things like that. With regards to trauma, you have nightmares, flashbacks, etc. So that's all in one person. Nobody can see you having a nightmare, nobody can see you having a flashback, but it's happening to you. When you start thinking about social, so you are unable to engage with people that you don't know, so you either don't care for yourself, so you are unable to interact with them that way, you aggressive to other people, you're very rude, etc. So they find it unpleasant to be around you, and then also with your family, you have issues there. And the last one is occupational. You're unable to function at work properly, either to the same level or an expected level that you are required at work.
So how do you reach out when you're going through all of this in your mind, in your spirit, in your psyche? How can you allow your friends or your family the opportunity to be there for you? How do you speak up and you let them know that this is what I'm going through, I need you? How were you personally able to open up to your mom, for her to be there with you and for you through the times?
This is going to be an overestimated statement, but you need to acknowledge that there's a problem. So a lot of people they know that something is wrong.
Personally, you should acknowledge it personally, or they should acknowledge it?
So you must acknowledge it personally.
Okay.
Because sometimes something is happening, but you're unable to make a name for it. So put it together. So put it together. Say, what's wrong? What am I feeling? Sometimes you can write it down. Sometimes you can talk to someone and say, I don't understand what's going on. So that you can, because it's difficult to ask someone, help me, but then they say, okay, how? And you're like, I don't know, So when you have an understanding, you don't have to know exactly what it is and know, I've got post-traumatic stress disorder, so I need help. No, but say, I'm having nightmares, I'm having flashbacks, I think it started here, I'm not really sure. Try to define it for yourself so that you can also be able to express it, Sometimes you don't have the opportunity to do that. So when you do speak to people, speak to someone you trust. Because when you speak to someone you trust, they're usually someone who knows you very well, and you know very well. You can expect or anticipate their response. And it's also someone that if you need them to do something for you, they will be able to help you.
That's so good.
It's very difficult, especially in the context of when we go to our priests and that, in the African and, you know, black societies, where we say, okay, the priest is going to pray for me. And then I'm like, okay, but I need antidepressants. And he's like, well, can't really help you there. You should see a doctor. But then he doesn't really send you to a doctor.
Yeah.
And, you know, so you need to be able to trust that person. Because if you say to your mom, okay, I need antidepressants, like in my case, my mom took me. She like booked appointments. She went with me, you know, she spoke to me. We debriefed. The other thing is, you know, understand yours and other people's limits. And I think this is the difficult one. Because if you don't know what you can and can't do to help someone who's going through mental illness, you're actually going to do more harm. So for example, friend, if you need anything, call me. I'll be there. If your friend is depressed to the point where they want to kill themselves and they call you at 2 o'clock in the morning, you have said, call me, I'll be there.
Yeah.
You need to then be prepared to do that. And it's not a bad thing to say, I can't help you right now. But you need to know your limits. And that's where a lot of like dysfunction comes, because you feel like you said you would be there for me. Isolation, you said you would help me. Why is nobody here for me? And that's tricky. And that also why psychology and like having group meetings and family sessions are so important, because it helps you as the person who's suffering from the illness understand what's going on with you, so that other people can be explained to them, but also for you to say, okay, I need X, Y, and Z, but your dad is also going through his own things. He can't really help you right now. That I think is, you know, when we treat psychiatric illness, actually in medicine, whenever we treat any illness, as far as we can, we try to avoid medication. I know some people always think, oh no, but I just want antibiotics. So no, we try as much as we can to do things like diet, exercise, psychology, social work, interventions that are non-medical and non-pills, because we don't want that dependency on the medication, because it changes your physiology in such a way that you are then going to need that thing on and on. Having said that, if mental illness is so severe that it's unable to be changed or unable to be reversed with non-pharmacological or non-medical interventions, that's when we give medication to people. And so medication involves, a lot of psychiatric illness involves chemical and hormonal imbalances in the brain. And so what we need to do is then give you those medications over a long period of time. For example, depression, we give people medication for at least 6 months, because the onset of the effects will only start between 2 to 6 weeks. So some people take it for a week and they're like, I don't feel any different. And then they just stop taking the medication and they become more depressed. Or they take it for like 2 months and they're like, I'm fine, then they stop. But now the hormones that we had been fixing are now being stopped and you go back again. So some people we treat for at least 6 months and then we reassess. Some people need more, some people need less. Things like schizophrenia, the index presentation, the first presentation, we treat for at least 2 years. So psychotic disorders, we at least treat for 2 years. Not to say you're ill, but we need time to change those hormones and fix the brain back to where it's supposed to be before we can say, okay, you can come off that medication. And that's what people don't understand about the medical side of mental illness.
So what is the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist? Where does a person dealing with mental health go when they're looking to find and seek professional help? Where do they go to? Can they go to their GP? Do they go to the psychologist, or do they go to the psychiatrist? What should they do?
So I'll speak about it in two sectors. So the one is if you're a private patient, so you have medical aid or you can pay cash. Usually it starts off with a visit to a GP. Sometimes you can go straight to the psychologist. So the GP or the psychologist, the GP is a medical doctor who has done general practice or family medicine. The psychologist is someone who studied psychology and then they become a clinical psychologist. So they just deal with psychological issues. They counsel patients, they refer patients to doctors or refer patients to other interventions that they need.
And you can find them in government hospitals.
I'll get to the state.
Oh, okay,
now.
sorry.
So with the psychologists, they are not qualified, so they cannot write medication. And that's when they send you to a psychiatrist. So a psychiatrist is a medical doctor who has specialized in psychiatric illness. And so they are then going to be able to prescribe medication, because when you prescribe medication, there are side effects that are medical and they need to be dealt with medically. So that's why you need to be seen by a psychiatrist.
Is that then when you pay?
So you pay from day one in private.
Okay.
In the government, we're lucky that we have the kind of system that we have where you don't have significant, rates that you have to pay. The waits are a little bit longer. So you start at your local clinic, and your local clinic, and especially community health centers and secondary hospitals in the community will usually have a psychologist and a psychiatrist there. And then the psychologist usually sees you first. If they think that you need more or medication or they need more help, they refer you to the psychiatrist, and then the psychiatrist will manage you. However, importantly, the psychiatrist deals with just the medical aspect and refers you to a psychologist for therapy, a social worker for anything that you need with regards to grants and functioning, occupational therapist, because sometimes you can be so depressed or so psychotic that it affects your actual function. You're unable to take care of yourself. So they help teach you activities of daily living. When you go to work, what level of work can you do depending on where you are in your illness. And then they also refer you to like physios and people who can get you moving, and they do some really cool things like this is why I say psychiatrists kind of are the leader of the team. They call multidisciplinary team that guide everyone to get you to mental health.
And so does the government supply a psychiatrist, or you'd have to budget for a psychiatrist?
So if you are in the state department or state area, you receive that as part of the government subsidy. So it's a significantly less cost. You just pay for your opening of your file, and then everything else that you get from there is basically free.
That's very good. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, but again, the waiting times can be long.
Yeah.
You can wait sometimes up to 2 to 3 weeks to see a psychiatrist, unless you're having an acute episode. Then obviously they're on call and they come and see you.
Okay.
But if you can afford it and you have the funds, something like a psychologist in the private sector can be anywhere between 900 and 1,200 rand per session.
Oh shucks.
So medical aids sometimes do cover it up to 50%, some cover it fully up to an amount. So it would just depend. You need to just check with your medical aid and then also see if your family can help you. And so I that's another thing that I think we need to do is make a cap on how much we can charge as medical professionals who are in the psychiatric or in the psychological space,
especially now.
Definitely.
So thank you so much for that breakdown. That was very, very, very hectic, but very, very helpful, because I feel like we have these questions. We don't know the answers to these questions, and you pretty much broke it down for us to know, if ever I'm going through this, where do I go? What does it look like? Can I identify this and actually seek professional help, But the one thing I'm always asking, the guests for the siblings is, what would you say to your 16-year-old self?
Good Lord. Wow. Baby girl.
Darling.
I think she'd be like, who the hell is baby girl? But anyway.
Firstly, let's deal with this, Mara.
No, I'd be definitely, I would say that it's a lot to deal with. You're a young black girl who's going to be dealing with sexual violence and sexual incidences all the time. But you will navigate it. You will be able to overcome it, and you will be safe, provided that you know and you remember all the things that your parents taught you. They sound like they were hopping on. They were talking a lot, but they really did mean well when they said what they said. They are supportive. They are there for you. They really are, even though they may not seem it. And they're also going through their own thing. So don't necessarily focus on the external. There's always going to be help there for you, whether it is your friends, whether it is your teachers at school, whether it is the people who are senior to your life, because people are invested in you. People want you to succeed. They will see you succeed, and they will be there when you succeed. And when they show you who they are, believe them. Because you will hold on, and they will break your heart time and time again, and you will waste time. But let them go. I promise you, it's going to hurt, but you will rise. And you have. Babes, you will love, you will laugh, and you will live. So do beast.
No, I almost cried there for a second.
Don't cry.
There was an apple in my throat.
The other thing is, like, this year at my birthday, I remember I made a speech and you missed it because you had to go to work.
Yeah.
Those things.
Yes.
But basically what I did was I had gone around the room and I saw all the people in my life who were doing really great things, and I acknowledged them all for that. But I remember saying to everyone in the crowd, there's going to be a time where it's 3 o'clock in the morning and I don't want to study and I'm tired and I have an exam and I just can't do it.
Yeah.
And the same way that I'm here for you, sometimes I'm going to need you to be here for me, because I need to save the babies. Like, the babies need to be saved. And I want to save them, and I really want this world to be a better place because I was in it. So I need you at some points, but even when you're not there, don't think that I need you entirely.
Yeah.
Because I have God.
Yeah.
So if you don't feel bad if you can't be there for me, I have God, he'll be fine.
Sure.
But thank you, to those people who are in your life. Thank them. Thank them for supporting you and for being there and being that shoulder, because sometimes you underestimate how much you just listening to someone can really change their life. I had a friend who we were in high school together, in varsity, and he said this to me the other day, after the mental matters thing. He had said that there was a day he was sitting on his bed in res, and I went to go visit him, and we were just sitting on the balcony talking about random stuff, and he said that day he was going to kill himself.
Sure.
And I walked in and I just sat there and talked nonsense.
Oh my God, Khanya.
Dude, I literally I dropped my phone, and he's like, you coming into that room made me wait another day. And the next day was better than the day before, so I waited another day and another day and another day, up to the point where I was now. And I was just like, why are you telling me this 6 years? I think it's 6 years later.
My God.
And he's like, you literally saved my life. And I'm like, dude, you can't tell me this 6 years
Thanks
later.
a lot, bro.
Dude, dropped my phone, and I was just, don't make me cry, Linda.
I'm sorry, you're making me cry with that story. Wow.
But you don't know whose life you are saving. You really don't. And you make mistakes, and you apologize for the mistakes, and you get up and you don't make them again. Promise yourself. Promise me if you're not going to promise
Because as
yourself.
humans, we're inconsistent. And I think we need to start having grace upon firstly ourselves and upon everyone else. We need to realize and recognize the fact that personally we are inconsistent.
Definitely.
And other people are inconsistent as well. And the moment we start accepting that is the moment I think we will be sane as a community, and we'll start communicating again. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's very. But then also, I just wanted to speak and touch on the sexual abuse.
Yeah.
The one thing that I wanted to find out from you, I know you're in a relationship. How
with the bae of the world?
We actually spoke with him last week. So.
Yes, I know. The sexiest man alive.
What I wanted to ask you, is, how did you get to a place where you could relation with men? And right now you spoke about a friend that is a guy. How could you bring yourself to a place where you're able to even have friendships with guys?
So I think the one thing is also, my dad is a man, so
yeah,
my dad really is very loving. So I think that was also,
and your dad is involved in your life.
He's involved. He's a Zulu man. He's very traditional, but he's loving.
That's good.
So I think, luckily, I had that example of someone who was not trash, who I could focus on. But I really had to get to a point where I said in myself, men do stupid things, and women do stupid things. Some men, in this case, do things that hurt other women, and some women do things that hurt other men. This person did this thing to me, and he maybe is going to do it to someone else. But I've known so many men, and I've had so many good guy friends, that I can't let this one poor man's, decision to take power over a helpless little girl, or this one guy who decided to abuse a position of power over me, default every relationship that I had. Guys, this took me I think a year to come to. This is not wisdom that just popped out of nowhere.
And you're still going through it today.
Yes.
Today you're still,
it's
still a decision.
I really had to work through, and I had to converse, and I had to talk to people and say, why me? What was so special about me? This is someone who I loved. I was in a relationship with this person, and he still felt the need to do that. Why? Who are you? Who am I? And then on top of that, there's the whole societal, no, but it's your boyfriend, you can't say that he raped you.
Was this the one in high school?
No, so this is now.
So this is a different
This is a
occasion.
different
Okay,
occasion,
tell us about
yes.
the different occasion. Because the first occasion was when you were outside school and this person grabbed you and then
Yes.
did the thing. And then the second occasion,
So
and
just
when
a quick
did that
summary
happen?
was I was dating this guy. We had been dating for about 2 years. We went to a festival, and I think what had happened was my drink got spiked. I'm not sure how.
Sure.
I woke up the next morning in bed, but I was very sore. My private parts were sore. I was,
Yeah.
Back and forth between him and I. What happened? And eventually it came out that this issue with regards to him, he had had sex with me while I was asleep.
Yeah.
And eventually I fought him off. But I don't remember any of that, and it was a betrayal, because I'm like, if you weren't my boyfriend, this is a rape, but you are my boyfriend.
Is
And
it
then,
still?
like,
Yeah.
but like we do have intercourse, but like, how do you navigate that? There's a lot of things.
Sure.
And so you get to a point where you really feel betrayed because there's someone who you trusted, but were you really betrayed? So there's that conflict that you have with yourself. And I had that for a long time, and even fought with him until we ended up breaking up for other reasons, but I really got to a point where I said, I know what love feels like, and I know when it's good, it's really good.
Yeah.
And coming now, even with my spiritual and my move going into God, that lesson, as painful as it was, taught me that I have the most incredible love to give, irrespective of how someone is going to use it and abuse it. And so I can't stop giving love because someone took it away from me or tried to break me.
And that's a decision you took.
It's a decision I took, and I continue to take every day. I have to fight insecurity. I have to fight doubt. I have to fight fear, because that's all the opposite of love. So it's still a journey that I take to. And also, my boyfriend is incredibly sensitive. He's incredibly insightful. The fact that I'm even able to talk about this was because of his understanding and his accepting of who I am, to the point where I was able to say, you know what, if you love me and you're okay with hearing the story, not okay, but I mean, you are allowing me to have this experience, who am I to not, help and give other people a platform to hear the story and hear that it can come out well on the other side.
Yeah.
So I'm incredibly blessed because I did communicate for him from day one what I think a relationship should be, how it should be. But yeah, that took time. So once it happened, it was fine, and now I'm better at it. But yeah, you just have to communicate,
Yeah.
Just have to communicate with yourself and with your partner.
Sure. Thank you, Mummy, for your time.
Thank you, babes.
Thank you for your heart. Thank you for sharing everything that you've shared with us today. I know there are so many siblings, not just women siblings, but also male, young men that are listening to this conversation. And I think and I'm hoping and I'm praying that it's changed their perspective and outlook on the issues that are happening today. I mean, we're having young ladies being burnt by their boyfriends as well, currently in our society. And I'm hoping this conversation somehow struck a chord with many of the young men out there.
Yeah, but also I think hurt people. So young men allow us to heal you.
In conversation.
Definitely.
It might, sorry, I disturbed you.
It might not be, like a psychologist or psychiatrist. It might even just be like another brother, or even your girlfriend, your wife, someone at work that you turn to. But I think African men have a lot of pressure in them, not just in relationships, but also in the world, because they have to be better than most.
Yeah.
They have to support and provide for everyone.
Yeah.
And people look to them for the answers. And, when they don't have the answers, they commit suicide.
Sure.
HP. So we are here for you, and I don't know about other people, but I definitely know I am here for you. African men, reach out to us. We are here.
Yeah,
We want to
please
hear
do.
your stories. We want to help you, and we don't want to be hit by you. We want to be loved by you, and vice versa. So,
And on that note, guys, if ever there's any topic you guys would like for us to explore more and talk about, if there's anyone you'd love for us to bring in studio and really talk to and conversate with, let us know. Hit us up on social media at Conversations with My Big Sister on Instagram, Touch HD on Twitter. Let us know. We want to know your thoughts. We just would love to know from you guys and hear from you guys. Whatever you'd like for us to talk about, we aim to be as controversial as possible. So thanks, siblings. We appreciate your time, and see you guys soon. Bye.
bye.